A four-way traffic light or signalized intersection controls the flow of vehicles and pedestrians in order to improve safety and road access. An intersection's history of crashes, traffic volume, and location to a school crossing are some of the factors that determine whether it warrants a traffic signal. Studies by the Federal Highway Administration indicate that about 40% of all vehicle crashes occur at intersections, and most of these are rear-end collisions or side swipes. In addition, about 20% of crash fatalities are intersection-related as well. Alcohol, speeding, and red light running are some of the major factors that contribute to these crashes.
Because intersections involve vehicles moving and turning in different directions and pedestrians crossing at different points, it is imperative that the driver be completely focused on the task at hand and not be looking at the smartphone or changing music. Although the green light gives the driver right of way, it does not ensure that the other driver will stop for a red light or that a pedestrian will not jaywalk. Since intersections can be very unpredictable, it is necessary for the driver to not only be very alert, but also to drive defensively, anticipating and avoiding situations that may result in a crash.
When approaching an intersection, drivers should be in the lane they need to be in, and remember to signal before changing lanes. In order to avoid side swipes, drivers should also watch for and anticipate other vehicles that may be changing lanes. Drivers also need to maintain a safe distance and watch for turn signals and brake lights from the vehicles directly in front of them. If drivers are planning to make a right-hand turn, they should always watch for pedestrians and cyclists who might be going straight through the intersection. Before starting up and crossing the intersection, drivers should watch for cross traffic and make sure there are no red light runners. Stop for yellow lights unless it is unsafe to do so, and watch out for left-hand turners crossing your lane from the opposite direction.
A driver always needs to be alert to the presence of any pedestrians at an intersection, especially if there is one who is using a white cane or traveling with a guide dog. When a motor vehicle hits a pedestrian, it is usually a right-hand turner that is involved. For this reason, it is important for the right-hand turn driver to be extra careful and to always look far enough to his or her right to avoid being surprised by a pedestrian stepping out in front of their vehicle as they are starting into their turn. The tendency is for the driver to only look left to make sure there are no vehicles in the way before he enters the intersection. The driver should always look far enough to the right to ensure there are no pedestrians getting ready to cross, and then look left again before starting up slowly. Look before you go, start up slow.
When yielding to a pedestrian who uses a long white cane or a guide dog, the driver should be patient and understand that the visually impaired pedestrian is listening for parallel traffic flow and may need a few extra seconds to confirm to themselves that it is indeed the correct time to start their crossing.
In this scene, the right-hand turner is stopped at a red light waiting for a safe gap in the flow of perpendicular traffic on the cross street. This is a situation that could result in an intersection crash if the right and left-hand turners are not alert to each other. Drivers also need to be alert to people biking and walking, like the ones shown here. The next scene involves the same situation, but with different drivers and viewpoint. Here we see what the left-hand turner sees as he begins to make the turn, with the right-hand turner going first. Drivers should remember to pull into the correct lane to avoid collisions. Drivers should also be aware that at a traffic light-controlled intersection, the visually impaired pedestrian will begin crossing a street when the near parallel traffic starts up and enters the intersection. When the parallel traffic begins its green light cycle, this will generally, but not always, coincide with the start of the pedestrian walk cycle. On the south side of the intersection shown here, the two cycles do coincide.
However, on the north side of the same intersection, the pedestrian walk signal is delayed approximately 20 seconds from the time that the near parallel traffic begins the green light cycle. Without an audible pedestrian signal, the visually impaired pedestrian is only able to determine the walk cycle from the flow of traffic, and will therefore need to begin crossing at the beginning of the green light cycle. Drivers should try and understand the situation and be alert and patient whenever they notice a pedestrian with a guide dog or a long white cane.
Our final right-hand turner shows how to correctly make a right-hand turn on red by waiting for a safe gap in the flow of traffic and then pulling up to the intersection to make the turn.
When the driver intends to make a left-hand turn at a four-way traffic light intersection, he needs to not only watch out for and yield to other vehicles that may be coming straight through the intersection from the opposite direction, but the driver also needs to look for and yield to pedestrians who may be using the crosswalk.
When the left-hand turn driver yields to the pedestrian in the crosswalk, he should keep the car's wheels pointed straight ahead instead of at the crosswalk. This is important, just in case another vehicle hits the driver from behind, pushing his vehicle into the crosswalk and possibly hitting the crossing pedestrian.
At a major four-way traffic light controlled intersection, the left-hand turn vehicles will have their own lane with a dedicated signal, or left-pointing green arrow, which allows them to turn left at a time when pedestrians have a don't walk signal, and the opposing traffic has a red light. If the green arrow turns and stays red, then the left-hand turners are no longer allowed to turn and must wait for the next left turn cycle. If the green arrow turns yellow and then disappears into the regular green light, the driver is allowed to turn only after yielding to oncoming traffic and pedestrians in the crosswalk.
After the green arrow turns to a green light, it is safer if the left-hand turner pulls into the intersection only if it's not occupied by another left-hand turning vehicle. When the light changes from green to yellow, it is safer for the driver to wait for the next left-hand turn cycle.
The safest way to make a left-hand turn at a busy traffic light controlled intersection, like the one shown here, is demonstrated by the white truck. Here, the driver waits at the limit line until the car positioned ahead of him in the intersection has made their turn, and then waits for it to be clear to make his own left-hand turn. A patient driver chooses to make the left-hand turn when he does not have to hurry it, and he will have more time to see and react to the unexpected.
Drivers should be aware that the pedestrian crosswalk needs to be clear of vehicles for the pedestrian to safely use it, and should therefore not stop in the crosswalk during the red light cycle. When the driver stops in the crosswalk, he forces the pedestrian to walk around his vehicle, oftentimes outside of the crosswalk or bordering the intersection. When a visually impaired pedestrian determines that a car is blocking access to the crosswalk, they will choose to wait out the cycle and cross when they can remain within the crosswalk. The driver should always stay behind the limit line to ensure pedestrian access to the crosswalk. In order to reduce the chance of an intersection crash, drivers should never park in a crosswalk or near an intersection. When a car is parked in or near the crosswalk, it endangers people walking, biking, and driving. As shown in these clips, the cyclist should follow the rules of the road and always ride with the traffic. Also, the cyclist should always wear a helmet to avoid injury. When traveling downtown, it is better for the cyclist to walk her bike on the sidewalk and in the crosswalk. This helps the cyclist avoid running into pedestrians or being hit by motor vehicles pulling out of parking lots or driveways. As shown in these scenes, the cyclist should never cut through the crosswalk. Such behavior is dangerous and could result in injuries to pedestrians and the cyclist.
It is important for the pedestrian to remember to push the button to activate the walk cycle at a traffic light controlled intersection. The downtown areas of most towns and cities have the pedestrian signal set to operate automatically. However, pedestrian signals outside of downtown areas need to be manually activated. At different times of the day, the same intersection may have light cycles that are either timed or actuated by traffic flow. By pushing the pedestrian signal, a person gives a guaranteed amount of time to complete the crossing and does not risk having the signal change on them midway through their crossing.
It is also important for the pedestrian to not begin crossing if the pedestrian signal says "don't walk," or if the pedestrian countdown has begun, which corresponds to the flashing "don't walk," and indicates the number of seconds remaining before the traffic light changes from green to yellow and then red. Also, crossing the street at the wrong time is illegal and dangerous. Pedestrians should also not cross at mid-block on busy streets. Before starting to cross at a traffic light intersection, the pedestrian should always remember to look to his or her left for the right-hand turner who will have a green light if the intersection is on the pedestrian's left. If the intersection is to the pedestrian's right, then the right-hand turner will be looking to their left for a safe gap in the flow of traffic to turn right on red. Either way, the pedestrian should not assume that the driver will see them and yield. While crossing, the pedestrian should also watch out for cars that may be turning when there is a break in the flow of traffic going straight through the intersection.
The pedestrian should also be sure that he is visible to traffic before stepping off the sidewalk into the crosswalk. Look for obstacles that might prevent a driver from seeing you. You never want to surprise a driver by just appearing in front of them.